So this is a Swisher trim and mow. It is just a heavy-duty weed whacker, and over here tapping it with my foot. That's usually where you put your line, your trimmer line connected to it on both sides. So you can walk behind, and it's just a heavy-duty weed whacker. So if you've got, you know, heavy-duty stuff that your line trimmer won't cut through, this thing comes in really handy. But this has been sitting for quite a while. I don't know how many years, 3 or 4, 5 years maybe. And I know I'll be using it later on this year, so I put gas in it and, you know, pumped it up, and it's trying to start. I mean, it'll crank over just for a couple of seconds, and that's it. So, but that's what I was expecting. It's been sitting for so long, and all the old gas, I'm sure the carburetor is just full of varnish. So I'm just going to clean this sucker up, take off the carburetor. After all, it is a Briggs and Stratton 6.5 horsepower. So I'm going to take the carburetor off, clean it out, try to get all the varnish out, and put it back together and see how she rolls. Well, let's get started. So if you look at it, this has a Briggs and Stratton engine. This is one of the heavy-duty weed whackers. Does a pretty good job if you're really dealing with heavy brush. Let's get the air cleaner off. And that's cool, has the pre-filter also. Take these covers off. And with many Briggs and Strattons, there's usually these 2 bolts here for the carburetor and one securing it to your bracket. So we'll get these off. And if you can see down there, as usual, there is your air hose going in. So this is ready to come off. Just pop it off that air hose. Alright, and a 3/8 to get the carburetor off. I'm going to loosen it up right now, but I know I need to see if I can drain the gas out of there. Alright, all that's loose. Let's get the gas out before we go any further. So you can see I disconnected the fuel line, fuel hose here, and it is actually a pretty beefy one. But this is gravity fed, but you can see it's barely trickling out. So that might be part of our problem. Alright, so I got the hose off, got everything drained out of there. And just by visually looking down the hose, you know, I straighten it out and take a look, and I can see a little pinhole where some light's trying to get through. So this hose is definitely clogged big time. So back to the carburetor. Let's finish getting this thing off, get it off the linkage here. Okay, this thing, the bowl, I can hear some gas in there. I can hear it in the bowl, but it's not coming out, so this thing is pretty clogged. Alright, so back to my little tray. And when I start loosening it, yep, so there was definitely gas in there. But like I showed you before, when I turned it upside down, nothing was coming out, so it was definitely clogged. And I hope this gasket isn't, and a lot of times this little piece, the nut that you take off, You can see it has a through hole, which was very clogged, and then up at the top here, which is a very small one. I need to get a sewing needle or a pin or something and make sure that is clean. So I'm going to poke away our little bolt there. And this top one's a little bit smaller, so I went and got a needle or a sewing pin. There it goes. Boy, that thing was really clogged. So when that's clogged, this thing can fill up, but there's no, your bowl can fill up, but with this blocked, there's no gasoline getting up into your carburetor. So ooh, man, look at all that varnish and sludge in there. Yeah, so this whole carburetor needs to soak. Luckily, the gasket looks like it's in pretty good shape. But that's probably one of the worst I've seen. Just a lot of gum and varnish all over everything. Let's let this soak overnight. I'll put them in a bowl, let them soak overnight, and then put it all back together. Okay, so I let this stuff soak overnight, clean everything off. Now the bowl's nice and clean. Carburetor's clean. All the little components. That was a lot of varnish, so let's put it all back together here. We've got our little jet pin here. Slides into the slot. Just hold it in place and center it over that. There we go. And we can push our pin through. There we go. Make sure it's moving freely, and with that gasket in here you should feel a soft spongy feel at the end. So let's get our bowl back on. Here's the gasket. And there's our little bolt. Make sure that's all cleaned off. And there we go. Everything's tight. It's ready to go back in. Okay, so we're ready to put this carburetor back on. But remember that fuel line, when I checked through it, I was just looking through it and it was just, you know, gummed up with varnish just like everything else. So I gave it a good cleaning and made sure the tank was clean. So we're ready to go. Let's put our fuel line back on first. There we go. Let's slide this. I'm going to take the bolts back out. I put them back in there just so I wouldn't lose them. Let's slide our carburetor back on the linkage. There we go. everything snug. Let's get our fuel line back on. Looks like our gasket is still good. So remember to hook up the air hose under there. Line everything up. And now our air filter, which is in pretty good shape. Let's knock some of the grass out of there. All right. Well, let's gas her up and see if it'll run. Alright, I put gas in it. The spark plug is connected. Let's put the throttle on. Hunt the bulb a few times. Alright, man, that was one dirty carburetor. This thing sat for years, not being used. All the old gas and varnish, it was just coating everything from the fuel line and every piece of that carburetor. And it took overnight, you know, soaking that thing and cleaning it all out. But now it's good to go. So just remember, if it's going to store that long, put some additive in the gas or it won't do that, or just completely drain it out and just avoid this mess. But so be sure to subscribe to our channel and look for more videos on DIY maintenance and repair.